Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Record Rangers podcast, brought to you by NordVPN, the best place to get all your premium cybersecurity and all for the price of a cup of coffee per month. My name is Andy Newport. I'm joined as ever by Scott McDermott. Scott, how are you, pal?
I'm okay, Andy. I'm loaded with the cold after sitting in the freezing cold at Paisley. Obviously, you left me there on my own on Sunday while you were away covering minority sports. So,
we spot egg chasing in Dublin, so I'm recovering from drinking my body weight and alcohol over the weekend, so which is quite considerable, as you can see. So
proper grafters were sitting in with the wind howling in their face on Sunday. Anyway, I'll recover.
That's what you get. Okay. Well, listen. We'll get started. We'll get right into this. A 1-0 win for Rangers in Paisley. Hardly not exactly going to win any beauty contest prizes, is it? I mean, it was a pretty ugly win, but priceless in the sense that the Hearts result on Saturday night puts Rangers back right into the mix. How did you see it, and how did you think this? What do you think the consequences will be for Rangers and their title hopes?
Well, for a start, Andy, it's never pretty in Paisley, is it? Really, when you go to play St Mirren, I mean, it feels
like I've ever seen Rangers. I'm sure I looked at this. I think only once have they won there by more than 2 goals. I think they had a 4-0 win. Or Gerrard. I don't think they've ever had a really comfortable win there other than that one time.
And although I'm kind of half joking about it, the weather conditions made it even worse. I mean, it was genuinely gale force wind, rain, early kickoff. Pitch wasn't even brilliant. So Rangers just had to go there and do a job, especially after what's happened the last couple of weeks, obviously with the draw against Celtic in the league and then being knocked out of the Scottish Cup. The mood could have been really down. And I think, to be honest, I mean, it's strange, but I mean, after the Rangers dropped to 2 points at home to Celtic, obviously leading 2-0 and then drew 2 each, I think in a lot of people's minds, maybe even including my own, you almost just kind of thought, that's pretty much it for Rangers in the title race. You felt, that was going to be such a kind of psychological blow, as well as the points that Celtic had a wee bit of momentum again. Hearts obviously were out in front, and it was only when Hearts lost at Kilmarnock on Saturday night. I watched the game on TV, and obviously you check the table, and you think, God, I was actually, I know it sounds strange, but I felt quite surprised that Rangers were still so close. Knowing if they go and beat St Mirren, they go to within 3 points of Hearts at the top and really tighten it up again. So it was a massive game for them in that sense. I think Danny Rose pretty much said, with these 8-9 games left, it wasn't about looking pretty or playing fancy football. It was just about getting results. That's clear. And Sunday was a perfect example of that. They didn't play brilliantly. I think the big positive was defensively, because St Mirren always, I know they're without a manager at the moment, but in Paisley especially, St Mirren, even at Ibrox at times, St Mirren have caused Rangers real problems at the back with our forward players, whether that's been the physicality of an Ayunga or a Mandron or a Lundaloo, or previously with the kind of pace of Olisanya back in the day. But on Sunday, Rangers gave up very few chances. I don't think Jack Butland did a save to make. There was a real solid foundation there. And I think Fernandez and Giga are really coming onto a game together. Thought they were brilliant against Celtic in the cup tie. Last weekend, it was obviously goalless. And then it was the same again at the weekend. As I say, Butland wasn't involved at all. Rangers never really looked like conceding, even late on when a lot of fans maybe thought, here we go again. They're going to concede late on and drop more points. But they held firm. So I think defensively, it was really good. The big problem is, the strikers and the forward players aren't quite at it at the minute. And that's, you would think that's going to need to improve in the run-in, but the encouraging thing for Danny Rowe will be, getting into these last 8 games, touch wood for them, there seems to be a kind of solid base there again. And as well as the 2 centre-backs, obviously Chukwuani's added a bit of strength in midfield. You've got Connor Barron coming back into it as well, which I'm sure we'll discuss. So that was a real positive. The defensive display, and obviously the goal for Tuur Rommens getting his first goal. He's kind of threatened that in the last few weeks. He had big chances at Livingston and against Celtic, and he eventually took one on Sunday. And it was crucial because, as I say, with the forward players not quite firing, they needed somebody else to step up to the plate, and Rommens did it on Sunday with the winner.
It was reminiscent for me of the sort of early spell of the title winning season in 2020 when James Tavernier had a right spell of sort of getting himself into the back post. He seemed, I don't think he's quite getting the legs to get himself up and down now, but you can see with Rommens that he's got the energy, the power that he can do that, cover that full length of the pitch. And and watching that, I was thinking it was almost an identical chance to the one, as you say, he had against Celtic, and how different the last couple of weeks might have been had he taken that. But just to go back to Giga, I remember writing a story just after, I think it was ahead of the Hibs away game, just after New Year, saying that he was going to be back for that. He was going to be back fit and available. And I remember when we went online reading the comments from Rangers fans saying, don't need him, send him back to Wolves. I mean, at that point, you think he'd had a couple of games, I think an Old Firm game where he'd looked really, really shaky, really, a bomb scare material, frankly. And then, he'd obviously went off to AFCON, and during that period, that's when Manny Fernandes sort of really emerged as a proper option at the back. And to see him come back into the team has been a surprise to me, because I just thought it was going to be Souttar and Fernandes to the end of the season. But I think you've seen, obviously, John Souttar's form's dipped. I mean, I thought when he came on at the Old Firm game last week, as nervous a display I think I've ever seen from John Souttar. I mean, I think you're going back to his Dundee United days when he had that sort of identity crisis. Was he a holding midfielder? Was he a fullback? Was he a centre back? And that's the last time I can remember. He's always had the odd mistake in him, and frankly, he wouldn't still be at Rangers if he didn't have those lapses in him. But he was so off the boil, and it was in such stark contrast to Giga, who I thought had strolled the 90 minutes before he came off in extra time, and it was as solid and as dependable and as composed as a performance I think I can remember from, because I think he's always had a mistake in him as well.
Yeah.
So he's really hitting form. I mean, is that taking you by surprise in the same way it has me?
It has. I've just written a piece for the paper today, saying exactly that. I mean, it just shows you how things can change. I mean, Giga and Fernandes were pretty much written off by Rangers fans, I think, at the start of the season. I mean, different situations. Giga was in the team right away. I mean, I was looking at the games he'd played in today. I mean, he had a nightmare start to his Rangers career. He got sent off against Dundee at home. He was part of the team that got battered in Bruges that night, 6-0 when we were there.
Was it him and Butland were at fault for the catastrophic goal at home early on in the Bruges game as well, I'm sure?
That's right. He got hooked at half-time against Hearts when Rangers lost at home to Hearts, and he actually went out the team after that Hearts game. He only really got back in when Danny Rowe came in as manager, but even then, as you say, that game, the semi-final, League Cup semi-final against Celtic at Hampden, he looked an absolute bag of nerves that day. And you just thought then, I've said in the piece, I mean, if this says to Rangers fans then, who's your main defensive partnership first choice, they would have said Souttar and Derek Cornelius. Basically, those were the two. Fernandes, on the other hand, is a bit different. He just didn't play initially. I know Russell Martin mentioned it last night in his interview that he knew that kind of Fernandes coming in for Peterborough wouldn't play right away and was kind of biding his time with him, but he was out the team. I think he had a couple of wee niggles. He scored in his debut against Alloa, you'll remember, and they actually kept him in the team for the next game away to St Mirren, ironically, and he was poor that day. Ayunga and Mandron.
Responsible for losing a goal, then he sort of misjudged a ball.
That's right. Ayunga and Mandron kind of bullied him, and he showed his kind of inexperience. And again, he was then kind of out until Roll came in. I think Roll put him in against Hibs away, and he's just kicked on since then. But so you've gone for that, and I was guilty of it as well. I probably thought at that time, like, these two aren't quite up to it. And the turnaround, and the two of them, I think, deserve massive credit for how they've developed. And I look at Giga now, and I mean, on Sunday, might seem like a daft thing, but very early on in the game, it must have been the first 30 seconds of a minute. A long ball get played down the side of him. St Mirren looking to get in behind, and Lundalu was chasing him down. And I'm convinced back in August, September, Giga would have tried to control it, try to turn, pass it inside, or try to do something with it to keep the ball. Honestly, on Sunday, listen, the conditions maybe played a part as well. The ball just got knocked in behind him. He chased it down and just knocked it out of the park. I mean, just knocked it out for a throw into St Mirren. And that told me that he's at least learned. I think he's learned on the job in Scottish football. And I do think he's got a lot better. I mean, I hope I'm not speaking too soon and he goes and makes a mistake at the weekend, but he's been rock solid the last few weeks. Him and Fernandes look good beside each other. Fernandes, I think, just keeps taking his game up a notch every week. He's growing in confidence. The thing I like about Fernandes, as I've said to you before, whenever we've interviewed him, when he's been asked about what kind of parts of his game he has to improve on, he's always admitted that focus and concentration are the main aspects. And that's always been my view on Fernandes, that if he can cut out the wee lapses in concentration, then he could be a top defender. And I think it's encouraging that he himself recognised that and has made those improvements in his game. And
I think you can see them already. He's becoming a leader in the team.
Yeah,
you know, a guy who, he's 24, but probably hadn't played that much comparatively to other guys of his age. You know, he's obviously been down far down the sort of English football ladder. You know, 7th tier at one point. But I think he's grown, and you know, he's a big guy, big stature, but I think he's a big personality in the dressing room as well. And you can see that he's, you know, it's not that he's shouting and bawling at his teammates, but I think he's prepared to hold them to a standard and to demand more from them, and to criticise when guys aren't doing what they should be doing. I think you've seen that already, that he's somebody that's not scared to voice an opinion on the pitch. And I think that's the encouraging thing. What you want a guy of, you know, his talent is to then raise the levels of the guys around him as much as himself. And I think you have seen that. I think you've seen that he wants to be somebody that is not just somebody who performs himself. He wants to try and, you know, drag the team along with him. I think you've definitely seen that since he came in.
And he's obviously a threat in the opposition box as well, as he showed.
I mean, is that something that fans are just going to have to get used to? The fact is that the idea of having guys that can perform consistently week in, week out for the entire season, at the level where Rangers are now in the food chain, in the recruitment food chain, that's not what you're buying now. What you get really is guys that might have purple patches, and what you then need is the guys, when their form drops, somebody else steps in. I mean, I know it sounds sort of basic, but you know, this is where Rangers are at. They've never been able to really have a consistent 11 one week to the next. It's the forms of individuals have fluctuated so wildly, but that's just, you know, when you're spending £3-4 million in players, that's what you get.
I know what you're saying, Andy, and I think it's partly true, but I do think with centre-backs in particular, I do think Rangers fans have got the right to be able to trust their centre-backs to do the basics right. In this league, players need to recognise that at times it's not going to be pretty, and you're just going to need to do the basics properly. I don't think that's too much to ask, and that's what I'm saying. I think Giga and Fernandes, in different ways, they have kind of learned, and look, maybe that's Russell Martin and Kevin Thelwell, for instance, will probably say, well, that's what we always thought with these guys. You're bringing, I think Giga's only 23, Fernandez is 24, as you say, coming in for Peterborough, lower leagues in England. Maybe it was always going to take time, and maybe it was harsh for myself and others and supporters to judge them so quickly. But listen, that's life at Rangers, life at the Old Firm. The key thing is they have got a lot better. I agree with you. I think Fernandez is now one of the key players in the team, one of the first names in the team sheet. He's on a long-term contract, which is great for Rangers. I mean, Barry Fry obviously said a few weeks ago to us that he thought Rangers would go and make millions from him in the future, and there's every chance he'll be right with that, and Peterborough will be due a chunky sell-on fee if that happens. Giga's interesting because obviously he's still on loan for Wolves, and he was a £10 million player for them. I think they got him for Red Star. They saw real potential in him. Didn't quite work out for him in the Premier League, which saw him come up to Rangers. And at the moment, the way he's playing, I've even it sounds mad now after the start to the season, but I've heard Rangers fans saying, look, we might want to look at maybe trying to sign him. The question is, if Wolves go down, which obviously it looks like a certainty, go back down to the Championship, you don't know what the manager Rob Edwards is thinking, but he's got a £10 million centre back out on loan who's just had a season in Scottish football, which he might feel is perfect for him to go back down to the Championship next season, maybe save them spending money. Listen, he might have his own ideas on players, and maybe Giga will be surplus to requirements, and it's something Rangers could look at. But certainly, the way the two of them are playing just now, it'd be great for Rangers fans to think those two, as I say, 23 and 24-year-old, having had this first season, settling into life at Rangers and Scottish football, be great for the fans to think, let's try and build something with those two as the kind of real cornerstone at the back, the real platform for us to go, because they've shown they're capable. Even in the big games, as I say, against Celtic and Hearts recently, they've been really good. So it'd be great to think there could be a future in that partnership. Whether it will happen or no, I'm not sure. But it's incredible to think, from everything I spoke about at the start of the season, I'm now looking at this Rangers squad and this team under Danny Rowe and thinking, if they've got any chance of winning this title, I think that's going to be they're going to be vital for them. They're going to be the real solid platform for them to go and try and get points, because, as I said earlier, the front players aren't doing it. And if you'd have said to somebody, look, the key to winning this title will be Manny Fernandez and Nasser Giga at the back, people would have laughed at you 4 or 5 months ago. But I genuinely think getting into these last 8 games, they're going to be absolutely crucial. And I'll tell you something else. I think Danny Rowe is maybe now seeing that as well. I mean, I know you've spoke a lot about when Danny Rowe came in, how he made them tougher to beat. He got them more organised, more structured. Wasn't great to watch, but they got results. And then in January, it was this next phase of taking it up a level. Investing in attacking players like Nadiri and Skov Olsen to try and do the other side of the game. That's not quite worked for him. And I think with 8 games to go, with the league so tight, I wouldn't be surprised in the next few weeks if it almost goes back to what it was like when Rowe first came in. A lot tighter, giving away fewer chances, maybe not scoring as many goals, but like Sunday, nicking games 1-0 and getting 3 points, which is obviously going to be crucial in the run-in.
I mean, just talking about the front pairing, I mean, there's been times this season, the last few weeks, when, Nadiri and Yusuf Chamiti have looked dynamite together. I mean, think about the Hearts game where Chamiti gets a hat-trick, and it was, Nadiri's movement and his sort of selflessness off the ball, and his selflessness, he's making runs and dragging players away, dragging defenders away, making space for Chamiti that worked so well for Rangers. You know, I thought they were great for 45 minutes in that first Old Firm game. But there are times where they do just seem to get bogged down. I mean, you know, obviously, Rowe likened Nadiri to, you know, Thomas Muller when he first came in. And now I'm starting to see what he means, in the sense that he's a centre forward, doesn't really play like a centre forward.
Yeah.
You know, he does most of his work outside the box, running channels, scrapping with defenders, and yeah, I mean, as I say, it can, when Chermiti's at it, make room for him to score. But when Chermiti, as we know, who does blow hot and cold, isn't at it, then it just seems that they're doing a lot of graft in areas where they're not really going to be dangerous. I mean, I saw somebody online saying that Nadiri had 4 shots in goal at the weekend. I must admit, I'm stunned by that, because I can't, none of them sort of spring to mind. For me, he's early on, his first couple of appearances, he seemed to be a real centre forward that wanted to operate in between the sticks. I mean, I know it was only Queen's Park and he obviously got a hat-trick that day, but I can just remember so many chances getting flashed across the near post, and he was always there. But that was when he was a guy playing up front. I kind of feel like he's had to take a sort of secondary role to Chermiti, and I just don't think Chermiti is maybe, obviously we spoke about it so many times, he's not good enough, or he's not reliable enough, the guy that's hogging the sort of limelight up front. I mean, as a party that maybe thinks you'd like to see Nadiri given a shot up front on his own, to see if he can be the guy that can be the leading man, if he's not having to sort of sacrifice himself and do the dirty work for Chermiti, if he can be the guy and have somebody else making the kind of runs and have him where you want him to be in the sort of 6-yard box.
Potentially, Andy, I do think the system and the way they're playing will change in the next few weeks. I might be totally wrong, but you're totally right about Nadiri. No, in that 4-2-2-2 or 4-4-2 system, Nadiri's the guy who always has to drop in. You know, you're playing against a team with a 3. Even when Celtic came to Ibrox, if you watch them, as soon as Celtic get the ball, he just dropped into Rio Hatate. He was basically like one of Rangers' 3 midfielders. Now, that's not what we really expected from him. I agree with you. I expected this all-action centre forward to be sniffing out chances in the box, and bullying people in the box. And you're right, those first couple of games, the Hearts game, the first half against Celtic, I thought that's the way it was going to be. And the real shame for me in terms of the actual front two is that I just feel as if the last couple of games they've played, they've been totally detached from each other. They've not played as a pairing, as a strike force. I looked at the two of them on Sunday. It just felt as if they were playing their own game. No, there was no link up between them at all. There didn't even seem to be that much kind of communication between them. Me thinking that they're great strike pairings that Rangers have had, historically. I mean, obviously going way back when I was growing up, Taylor McCoist and Hateley's and Mo Johnsons, and even further on, like Purcell and Novo and people like that. Do you know what I mean? There was always that Boyd and Miller. There was always that kind of chemistry between two of them working together. I just didn't get that sense at the weekend. It's been like that for a couple of games, and I agree. I think Nadiri, there's no doubt he's doing a job for the team. There's no doubt he's a grafter. I mean, he looked shattered again on Sunday with the amount of running he had to do. But I just think Danny Rowe's going to need to decide. No, I don't think it helps Nadiri to be this hybrid forward where 1 minute he's in the box trying to be a centre forward, and the next he's trying to cover a defensive midfielder to give you more, an extra body in the middle of the park. I think if you go 4-4-2, you need to get the two of them in the box working together and causing havoc. And if you don't, as you touched on there, I think you need to tweak the system. And I mentioned obviously Connor Barron coming back at the weekend, and we know Rowe likes Barron. I just wonder in the next couple of weeks, because let's face it, I mean, Skov Olsen is contributing next to nothing, if we're being honest. He was dropped at the weekend. Gassama got his chance. Again, Gassama was poor in the game. Again, he looked like a guy whose best work might come off the bench rather than starting. So getting somebody in that right hand side has been an issue, or is an issue for Rangers, and I just wonder, will Rowe revert back to getting three in midfield? No, if that's Barron, Chukwueze, Raskin, for instance. Diomande obviously comes into the equation. I suppose you could argue Asgard as well. No, might come into his thinking, but just getting that shape again. And then it's what he does ahead of that. Can he play Mikey Moore as a number 10 more centrally, where a lot of fans think he can affect the game a lot more, and still have the two up front as a pair? Or, because of the job we've seen Nadiri doing the last few weeks, could you just ask Nadiri to play off one of the sides, whether that's left or right, and it just becomes that kind of 4-3-3 again, with the two kind of wide players getting a bit of licence, obviously, to come inside. So I definitely think there'll be tweaks in the next couple of weeks, because it's not quite working. And obviously part of the reason it's not working is like a Skov Olsen or a Gassama, that not quite producing. And also, as I say, I think you're losing a bit for Nadiri's game. But the forward players need to up their game in this run-in. I mean, 8 games to go. Rangers are going to need some people to step up and score big goals. And Nadiri, whether he likes it or not, 22, is under a bit of pressure, because, as you say, he's been signed for $4.5 million. He's only got 2 goals to his name against Queen's Park. I mean, that's it. And that has to change. I mean, we know about Sharmiti. He blows so hot and cold. He's brilliant one week against Hearts or Celtic, and then hopeless the next week. But Nadiri's a guy Rangers push the boat out for to get them goals and trying to try and get them over the line in this title race. So he's got to start scoring. But I do feel for him slightly that he's been used in this role where I don't think we're really maximising his strengths in the box in terms of his goal scoring ability.
Just what you're talking earlier on about players who you might have written off at one point, but now you're having to sort of reassess them. I mean, I suppose Connor Barron falls into that category. There's been times when he's been, written off or certainly come in for criticism, but obviously his form before his injury was terrific, and a lot of fans were gutted to see him ruled out for that couple of months that he was on the sidelines. The thing that I found interesting after the game, listening to Danny Rowe, where he was talking about, obviously they've got 4 sort of defensive midfielders now, if you want to call them that. We're asking with Chukwueze, with Diomande, and obviously Connor Barron back now. He talked about obviously 2 will play most weeks, 1 will be in the bench, and 1 will be in the stands. I mean, I find that an intriguing prospect, because I think in terms of guys that they've spent big money on, or who you would imagine are the more costly members of the squad with wages and things like that, Connor Barron would probably be the least expensive of all those, I imagine. Yet, I think there's an argument made that, maybe along with Chukwueze, that he's, in terms of form, he's certainly this season, he's been the guy that's been most reliable. So, I mean, how Daniel goes about choosing which of those 4 plays and who's on the bench, and as he says, who's going to be missing out, I think it's going to be fascinating, because think back to last season, the idea, say Diomande been sat in the stands would have been, would have taken a lot of people back. I mean, how do you see that selection dilemma playing out?
I'd be surprised if one of them's in the stand, I must admit. I mean, obviously I was there and Danny Rowe said that. I don't know if he was slightly just kind of over-exaggerating or trying to make the point that, he was almost kind of spoilt for choice now once he gets the 4 of them back. But even if you only play 2, I mean, even if you play Raskin and Chukwueze, for instance, I still think a Rangers bench would still have Barron and Diomande on it for different reasons. So I'd be surprised if one of them wasn't involved at all. And as I've just touched on there, I think you'll see them playing a lot in this run-in. You're right about Barron. I mean, I've been critical of him in the past as well. Maybe just I've maybe just felt he's not been quite up to the level of what's required to play central midfield for Rangers. I think you need to have a lot of facets to your game. And I look at Connor Barron, and listen, he's never going to... I don't think he's going to get you goals for midfield. I don't think he's ever necessarily going to unlock defences, with a killer pass. But what he does give you is energy and tenacity, and he's got a decent range of passing, which some of those things the other guys probably don't have. He's probably the most tenacious at the four of them in terms of Rangers trying to win the ball back. He is brave on it. He'll always look for it. That's been his detriment at times when he's lost it, and maybe Rangers have conceded a goal or two when he's lost it in a bad area. But you can't fault his attitude. And as I said earlier on, I think Danny Rowe really likes him. I think he's got a place for him in that squad. Certainly in certain games where he thinks Barron will be his best option. So I think it's a wee boost for him. It's a boost for Rangers getting him back just at this time. It's a boost for Barron himself, obviously, with the World Cup coming up, if he's going to try and stake a claim for that. And I just think, as we touched on, it gives Rowe some more options in there. I thought it was telling that Barron comes back at the weekend, first game back, and he's involved straight away. I think a lot of other players would have maybe a couple of games the bench or coming on late on or whatever, but he was pretty much called upon right away in his first week back available. I think that tells you about how much Danny Rowe rates him. And as I say, I expect he'll have a big part to play in this running.
Could just quickly, as we finish off, going over Sunday's game there, get your take on the sort of 3 refereeing incidents that we saw. So I think the first of them was a Raskin goal-bound header that sort of struck Alex Gogic's arm. That those apparently appeals were turned away. Then there was a Gogic tackle on Chermiti again that sort of went unpunished, only a free kick given, I think I'm right in saying. And then lastly, there was obviously the Asgard goal that got chopped off for offside. Some concerns from some fans online about the placement of lines. What was your take on the 3 instances, quickly, if you can?
First of all, the Gogic one, if you're asking me, do I think that should be given as a penalty in the game? No, I don't think those incidents should be given as a penalty, because I don't think there's much that Gogic can do about it. But if you're asking me, do I think Rangers had a strong claim for a penalty, given what's gone on before in Scottish football this season in the Premiership, and even what we've seen at the weekend with the Simon Murray incident, the Dundee derby? Undoubtedly, Rangers had a big claim, and I think they were really unfortunate not to get the penalty, or at least have it looked at by Stephen McLean. But VAR obviously had a quick look. I think it was Chris Graham that was in VAR. They've obviously had a quick look and completely dismissed it, which I thought was strange, because I mean it's a clear handball, it's a header going towards goal. I think you could argue his arms a wee bit out for his body. As I say, I'm totally saying it would have been so harsh on Gogic, but as I say, given what's happened this season, I think Rangers had a decent shout. The Chermiti one, I think it was Jacob Devaney that tackled him in the box. At the game, you'll know yourself, Andy, at the game that didn't seem like much. He just seemed to kind of catch him late. And obviously, we don't get replays or TV screens at St Mirren, so didn't think anything of it at the time. But when you look back, it's a wee bit naughty. Does catch him, kind of studs on the ankle. Again, there's been instances this season in other games where that.
Just a wee bit, I mean, I know it's going to be painful enough for Chermiti, but it's low down in the foot and the ankle, isn't it? It's not like it's high up the shin. I mean, I think those are the things that referees do take into consideration. No,
I think you're right. I think a yellow would suffice, but I'm just saying, as I say, that there's a kind of grey area with how high is it? What's the threshold for these kind of studied challenges? But no, a yellow would have been fine. And the Asgard goal, listen, I don't know. When you watch it on screen, it looks level or he's onside, but what else can we do but trust the lines, trust the process? I mean, we were told that offside decisions were black and white. There is no argument. So it's difficult to contest it. But all I would say is we know that our VAR system isn't as kind of technologically advanced, if you like, than other leagues. You only need to look at England, for instance, where they've got the semi-automated offsides, and it just looks very slick, and it's decided right away. I mean, ours does look like Peter still get the cranes out, try to draw the lines. So
I saw a great thing online this week where they've got obviously I think it was one of the Arsenal game at the weekend where when somebody was offside because half of a bum cheek was sort of poking over the sort of plane that they use, and they've obviously got the high tech graphics. Somebody had done one for the Asgard goal that they'd done this image of Lego. And it just made sum up the difference between the two setups. I mean, I thought that did make me laugh. I mean, you see,
it has to improve.
Supporters going, well, what frame are they using? Because at one point, you can see where maybe Sky have stopped it, and he looks to be level. But then when you go to the official VAR footage, and they're using maybe that's a millisecond later on, and by that point it's offside. Exactly. It's like, well, if you've only got I think the minimum in the Premier is 6 cameras. With down south, you're talking about up to 30. Obviously, there'll be more cameras for Sunday's game because it's on Sky. But if you've not got the full range of angles, then how can you be clear at what point the ball's been released, and is that precise? And we've already seen. I mean, I know there was complaints from some Celtic fans with the Maeda goal last week. I mean, from the angle you got, how can you possibly tell that somebody's arm or a knee or something isn't protruding behind one of the players that you just can't quite see from the angle because it's been blocked off? I mean, I do think we're reaching a point soon where our fans, players, coaches, everyone's so disillusioned with VAR that there's an argument just to be made just to go get shot of it, because nobody's enjoying it. Nobody has faith in it anymore. And unless you've got, even down south where they've got the bells and whistles, there's still enough people that can't stand it. I mean, and we all know that the big thing is that it's the killjoy aspect of it. Nobody knows when to celebrate goals anymore. And that is the one bit of football that everybody, takes the ultimate joy from. It's that, release of, spontaneous joy. I mean, that goes, then what have you got left?
I know. No, you're right. And I think if you're going to, it's one of those things, if you're going to do it, you need to do it right. And I know that costs money, and that's the big issue with VAR in terms of upgrading the actual system. It comes down to money. That's the reason why we've not got goal line technology in Scottish football, into cash. And I just think with these things, if you're not going to go the full hog and do it right, then what's the point in doing it? What's the point in doing it?
I was a fan of VAR from the get-go. I thought it would be exactly what was needed. I thought it'll take out all the debate, and we've all been to a pub after a game and spent an hour talking about a penalty decision, and was a bit, we're going to lose that? What's that? In fact, I think the debate's even more intense than it was previously. So I think I'm slowly getting to the point where I'd be for getting shot of it unless they can get it right, and I don't, unless they're going to pay for it, I don't think they will get it right with this version of it. Right, lastly, just to sort of close off before we finish up, obviously, as you mentioned earlier on, Russell Martin was on 5 Live last night with Mark Chapman and our very own Chris Sutton. What was your take on what he had to say? Sort of held his hands up, admitted he was to blame for the way his Rangers career crumbled. Only regrets he had, I thought was quite interesting, he said, was in some aspects he probably went too far, made too many changes, especially to the squad, too soon. But in terms of his tactical sense, it was interesting to hear him say he probably should have not only just stuck to his guns a bit more, he probably should have went further with the style of play, which I must admit, having sat the first 7 league games of the season trying to work out what it was that he was doing as they passed the ball endlessly along the back line, can you get on board with what he was trying to say last night?
Listen, no, certain bits. I mean, it was great to finally hear him speak after this long speak about Rangers. But I don't know, you just always get the sense with Russell Martin that as much as he talks a good game, he still doesn't quite get it. Do you know what I mean? In terms of being the Rangers manager. And look, as I touched on earlier on with like Giga and Fernandes, he's probably right to say he needed more time. There was a huge amount of change. We all know that at boardroom level and on the pitch in terms of new players and all that. So he probably did, would have needed more time to try and get it right. But he knows and we know you just don't get that time. And I think he'll look back, he touched on it last night, I think he'll look back and realise he should have probably done things differently. And in terms of the tactical stuff, as you've said there, I mean, it's okay to say that now. I mean, we were there, we were sitting watching a Rangers crowd going apoplectic at times with some of the this style of play and some of the passing and the lack of pace and the lack of speed in terms of moving the ball. So it was a bad period. It's probably easy to kind of forget just how bad it was when you were there at the time. And look, I know he's held his hands up to certain bits saying it was his fault, and I'm glad about that, because I think when something goes wrong like that as a manager, I think you're better just coming out and saying, look, it didn't happen for me. I made some bad decisions. Maybe the wrong club for him in terms of the style that he wants and how he operates as a manager. There's no shame in that. He just wasn't. He just wasn't cut out to be Rangers manager for one reason or another. And I'm sure. Listen, he'll get other jobs. He's obviously that. I'm assuming that'll be him back now. Being quite
he's turned down opportunities since.
Aye, but I'm sure he'll be more visible now in the media, and that'll probably be the start last night of him getting kind of back involved and getting his name out there. And I'm convinced clubs will make him offers, and there'll be clubs out there that are perfectly suited to Russell Martin's style of management. Unfortunately, Rangers wasn't one of them. And listen, I hope I'm wrong, because I actually quite liked him as a guy when he was here. But the big question is, will he ever get to manage as big a club as Rangers in the future? I think you'd probably need to doubt that at the moment. He might go and...
He did acknowledge he'd made mistakes. I think one of the interesting things is he held his hands up to was sort of showing too much of his personality and maybe the idiosyncrasies of himself in interviews and in press conferences, which I think is one of the things he maybe get strung out, get criticism for, they get stick for. I mean, we all know the stuff with the vegan stuff and all that came in. I mean, I think he's made mistakes in interviews about giving. He acknowledged that. That's the sort of stuff that maybe he shouldn't have let people get a glimpse into, but
none of that would have mattered.
I think the important thing that you mentioned there, that he just didn't grasp it, because and I think you even got another insight to that again last night, where he spoke about, I know there's a need to win right away, and within 4 weeks, when we had so much change at the club with new owners, new football structure, 14 new players, and then Champions League qualifiers after 4 weeks. But then he's still talking about it'd been good to get some time and time to make the changes. It's like, I still don't think he ever grasped the fact that he had to hit the ground winning from day one. It couldn't take 6 months to put in place the foundations. I still don't think he's grasped the need that he had to be a winning manager from day one. And I think that is why he was the wrong choice for Rangers, because he felt that this was a project, or this was something that he could mould eventually week by week, instead of going no. I mean, he even had a wee aside at one point. He says, just remember, I only lost one league game when I was up there. I was like, okay.
That sums it up. That sums it up, basically. That's what I mean by just even now, no quite getting it. I mean, you're talking about the stuff like his hair and the vegan stuff, none of that matters if you just beat Motherwell and Dundee the first 2 games of the season. I think he had Motherwell, Dundee and St Mirren. With all due respect to those clubs, and obviously Motherwell have went on to do great this season, but they weren't at that stage when Rangers played them first day of the campaign. That he couldn't have got an easier start as a Rangers manager. Motherwell, Dundee, St Mirren, to ease yourself in. And what an opportunity to go and get 9 points and really put a marker down. Instead, what was it? Rangers went, was it like 6-7 games into the season? They had to win a league game at home or something crazy like that. You can't get away with that. Even when there is big changes, even when there is a raft of new players and a new manager and a CEO and new owners, you cannot get away with no beating Dundee at Ibrox. I'm sorry. And that's the bit that he didn't quite get. No, wait, I go back to the quote. I think it was Patrick Stewart used at the time. No, we recognise and we know that we need to build the plane while flying it. That's what they had to. That was the job, and unfortunately, these guys like Russell Martin, like Patrick Stewart, they failed to do that in that period of time, and ultimately, that's why they're not there.
Well, we'll see if Danny Rowe can land the plane. The approach to the runway. The approach to the runway takes another step forward this weekend against Aberdeen. So we'll be back next week to discuss all the fallout from that one. We say thanks again to our sponsors, NordVPN. You'll be able to listen to this episode and many others on YouTube, the Apple Podcast app and Spotify. So please like and review, as that helps us to spread the pod far and wide. You can also keep up to date with all the latest news coming at Ibrox at dailyrecord.co.uk and in the paper. So Scott and I thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time.